Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, has been facing a major terrorism trial in Nigeria for months now. Recently, the court gave Kanu his final chance to defend himself. The court had previously ruled that the prosecution had enough evidence to move forward, rejecting Kanu's claim that he didn't have a case to answer. His legal team, at some point, withdrew from representing him, leaving him to take over his defense. That's when the stakes got even higher as Kanu opted to represent himself, a move that shocked many. Now, the court has given him until November 5th, 2025, to open his defense or risk forfeiting his right to defend himself. The key issue here is that Kanu has denied the charges, saying they lack legal basis. He claims that there is no law under which he is being prosecuted. And this is his argument as he faces some of the most serious charges, including terrorism. But here's where things get tricky. By waiving his right to legal representation, Kanu is in uncharted waters. In a case as complex as this, self-representation is a risky move. In court, Kanu had initially planned to call 23 witnesses, some of whom were high-profile figures, including politicians. However, he has since retracted his plan to bring these witnesses to the stand, indicating that he may be building a very different defense strategy. He has maintained that he has no case to answer, essentially challenging the validity of the entire legal process. This puts the court in a tight spot. Does it accept his reasoning and drop the charges, or does it proceed as planned, forcing him to open his defense? The deadline for Kanu to begin his defense is fast approaching, and the consequences are enormous. If he fails to present his defense by the court's set date, the judge could rule that he waived his right to do so, and that could have grave consequences. The court could move ahead and pronounce a verdict, which might be something Kanu wants to avoid at all costs. His future, as well as the future of IPOB and his supporters, hangs in the balance. This trial isn't just about Nnamdi Kanu anymore. It's become a symbol of wider issues in Nigeria, including the treatment of separatist movements, freedom of speech, and the extent to which federal authorities can suppress movements like IPOB. For Kanu, every move counts, and every word in court matters. Now, let's think about the larger implications. If Kanu's defense strategy fails, or if the court rules against him, it could ignite significant unrest in the southeast region of Nigeria, where IPOB has its strongest support base. This would bring up major political tensions, potentially triggering protests or backlash against the government. Already, there are signs that the public's patience with the handling of the trial is thinning, and many fear that the process could be biased or unfair. If Kanu is convicted, his supporters might see this as proof of systemic injustice, which could make the situation even more volatile. On the other hand, if Kanu somehow succeeds in his defense, it would send a strong message about the power of challenging authority, potentially strengthening separatist movements, not just in Nigeria, but in other countries with similar issues. But why is this case such a big deal beyond just the courtroom? It's because it speaks to the larger struggles happening in Nigeria. We're talking about questions of national unity, governance, the power of the people, and the extent to which individuals or groups are allowed to question the government. IPOB's agenda isn't just about Kanu's freedom. It's about a broader demand for self-determination. This trial could set a precedent for how such movements are treated in the future, not just in Nigeria, but across the continent. Now, let's talk about self-representation in a case like this. When someone opts to represent themselves, especially in a high-stakes case like terrorism, it's usually because they believe the legal system is against them. But here's the problem. Even the most seasoned lawyers struggle in these kinds of trials. The law is incredibly complex, and self-representation, while empowering, can be disastrous. It's like trying to build a house without the right tools. You might get some things right, but more often than not, you'll make mistakes that could cost you the whole project. By taking on this responsibility himself, Kanu has essentially put all his trust in his own hands. It could be a strategy to control the narrative, to have his own voice heard directly. But the risk of missing a critical legal step is huge. The court isn't going to cut him any slack just because he's representing himself. It's not going to give him extra time or make things easier. And if he does fail to meet the court's expectations, he might be setting himself up for a judgment that could be unfavorable. However, self-representation might also be a calculated move. By doing this, Kanu is sending a message to the court, to the government, and to the world. He's not afraid to take on the system by himself. He might be trying to expose what he sees as a flawed legal process or draw attention to what he believes are the political motivations behind his prosecution. It could also be that Kanu has chosen this path because he believes he has no other choice, feeling that his previous lawyers were not able to represent him in the way he felt was necessary for his defense. We also need to talk about the emotional and psychological toll this trial is taking on Kanu. This isn't just a legal battle, it's a personal one. For someone who has spent significant time in detention, facing what he believes to be unfair treatment, the mental strain must be overwhelming. He's constantly fighting not just for his freedom, but for his beliefs, his movement, and the cause of IPOB. Kanu's emotional state could also play a role in how he approaches his defense. When you're fighting against something you feel is unjust, it can cloud your judgment or push you to make decisions that are not in your best interest. As this trial progresses, it's important to keep an eye on the bigger picture. This isn't just about Kanu and his legal team. It's about what happens when the state goes after a figurehead of a popular movement, someone who has a large following and whose cause resonates with a significant portion of the population. The stakes are high because a lot of people are watching, and how this plays out could shape the future of separatist movements in Africa and in Nigeria in particular. It's not just Kanu's fate that's on the line. It's the fate of anyone who stands up against the status quo in the future. So, where do we go from here? The court has given Kanu until November 5th to start his defense. If he fails to do so, he risks losing his chance to present any defense at all. The pressure is on. Will he rise to the occasion and defend himself against charges that could change his life forever? Or will he let this opportunity slip away? One thing's for sure, this trial will have far-reaching consequences, not just for Kanu, but for Nigeria's political landscape and the way the world views the country's handling of separatist movements. This is more than a courtroom drama. It's a battle for the soul of Nigeria. His supporters are watching every move, every word, hoping that this might be the moment where Kanu's voice is heard in its purest form. This trial has become more than just a legal case. For many in the southeast of Nigeria and around the world, it is a symbol of resistance. Kanu's actions could ignite further protests, potentially leading to a major shift in the way Nigerians view issues of self-determination, federalism, and the handling of separatist movements. However, the government and judicial system are also keenly aware of how much is at stake. A decision in favor of Kanu could embolden other movements, while a decision against him could lead to more unrest and calls for greater autonomy for regions like the Southeast. The tension between the government and IPOB supporters has been simmering for years, and this trial might just be the boiling point. But let's take a step back and think about the bigger picture here. Kanu's self-representation is risky, but it's also a powerful statement. It's a statement that he's willing to face this head-on, that he's not going to cower before a system that he believes is oppressive. It's also a statement that he refuses to be silenced, even if it means taking on the full weight of the legal system by himself. Some might see this as a sign of strength, while others might view it as reckless. But here's the question that's on everyone's mind. Will this strategy work? Kanu's legal knowledge is being tested at the highest level, and it's clear that he's facing a steep uphill battle. Self-representation in any legal case, especially one as serious as terrorism charges, is not something to be taken lightly. While it's true that he's challenging the charges themselves, he must also contend with the evidence presented by the prosecution. This is where things get tricky. The prosecution has already made its case, and the judge has found enough evidence to proceed to the next stage of the trial. Kanu's argument against the charges needs to be more than just a claim. He has to present something solid in his defense. But is he prepared for that? Can he handle the intricacies of legal argument and counter the prosecution's witnesses effectively? Even if he does, the question remains whether the court will accept his defense. This trial has become a high-profile test of the Nigerian judicial system. How fair will it be? Will Kanu be allowed to fully present his case, or will the court move quickly to a decision, potentially cutting him off before he has a chance to properly argue his side? And let's not forget about the public perception of this trial. Kanu's supporters view him as a hero, someone who stands for their cause. For them, the trial isn't just about him. It's about the fight for the future of Biafra, a fight for what they believe is the right to self-determination. His actions have inspired a movement, and whatever happens in this trial will have a huge impact on how those supporters view the Nigerian government and its ability to govern the Southeast. The stakes are much higher than just Kanu's fate. This is about a future shaped by what happens in that courtroom. So, with the deadline looming, we wait to see what Kanu will do next. Will he take the stand, open his defense, and fight with all he has? Or will he decide that the battle is unwinnable and stand down? Either way, his decision will be seen as a significant moment in Nigerian history. For better or worse, Nnamdi Kanu is a figure who has shaped the national conversation about separatism, self-determination, and the power of the people. How this trial ends will determine whether that conversation continues or whether it fades into the background. This is the kind of moment that could change the course of history. Every decision Kanu makes, every move he makes in the courtroom will be scrutinized, and the world is watching. The Nigerian government, his supporters, and even international observers will be paying close attention to how this unfolds. The outcome could lead to significant political shifts, not just in Nigeria, but across Africa, especially in places where separatist movements are gaining traction. As we approach the final stages of this trial, one thing is certain: the eyes of the world are on Nnamdi Kanu. What happens next could have far-reaching consequences, and we are all waiting to see how it plays out. If you're following this story, you're going to want to stay tuned. There are still many twists and turns to come, and we'll be right here updating you as the situation develops. And remember, if you've enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Keep the conversation going in the comments. What do you think Kanu's next move will be? Does he have a shot at winning this, or is he setting himself up for failure? We want to hear your thoughts.